Sam Pittman had his first show, Sam Pittman Live, last night. You can hear it every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. This is a question I have for you. How much catfish, shrimp, chicken, and hush puppies and pickles do you feel like suffices $25? Like, if you're going to go in the catfish hole and spend $25, how much at least do you have to eat to feel like you got your money's worth?
Till they tell me to stop. Hey, that's enough.
That's
sir.
enough.
I've
been cut. You've seen me eat.
Yeah.
You'd be interested to know I've been cut off before at Corky's in Little Rock. Yeah. I ate 12 of the rolls, and the waitress was like, "Hey, sir, the kitchen told us in the back you can't eat anymore." So that was in my youngin. So
if you're going to pay $25, you need to get all the shrimp you can get. That's where the value's at. Yeah. It's in the shrimp.
So, and one of the guys that I love talking food with is Richard Davenport, as we welcome in on a Recruiting Thursday, brought to you by Breeden RV. Richard, how much catfish, shrimp, and chicken fingers do you have to eat at the catfish hole for $25 for it to feel like that you got your money's worth, man?
Oh, man, I don't know, but I will tell you, one time I went there when Pat was obviously alive, and God, I miss him. But Pat, he when you ate there, he kept having them bring hush puppies.
Oh.
I mean, your food, your plate was never empty. And I'm not going to lie to you. I was probably as good as it was. I mean, it was great. I had a steak that night, and the Catfish Hole has one of the best steaks I've ever eaten. But afterwards, I was so miserable. I almost wished I didn't go eat because I'd never eaten that much, and so I don't know. I know that I could eat a lot, and I did that night, but I wouldn't want to do it again.
It's one of those places you got to be really careful, or you will be full before the meal arrives because you've eaten about 900 hush puppies. So
yeah, it's kind of like Ty was saying about Corky's and the rolls. Man, you just got to push those things away because you can just eat them and eat them because they're so good.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Well, Richard, we could talk food with you all day, but I do want to touch on some recruiting news. I was made aware of this by one of our listeners, Josh, that MJ Daniels has actually pushed his decision date back to December. Now, he told 24/7 Sports, I believe it was Steve Wiltfong, that he was going to decide between Arkansas and Mississippi State. This has been a weird process that I've kind of gone back and looked through. Arkansas wasn't in his, I think, top 4, and then he just decided out of the blue, hey, Mississippi State and Arkansas, that's who I'm deciding with. Kind of update us on one of the Mississippi's best players, one of the best cornerbacks in the South.
Yeah, I've written about MJ about 2 times in the last month, and he's 6'3", 188. Good size, obviously, for a corner. Was a former Ole Miss commitment, but reopened his recruiting. And you're right, he announced the top 4 of Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Georgia, and Ole Miss on August the 22nd. But in talking to him right before the end of August, he said that Arkansas was definitely in his top 2. Was standing out, so he and the main reason for that is just Arkansas is just recruiting him extremely hard. You got to give a lot of credit to Sam Carter, the cornerbacks coach. They've got a great relationship, and he just feels very, very comfortable with him. And one thing that with Coach Carter, he's only 29 years old, still a very young assistant coach, and he relates well with the kids. And that's one of the reasons that MJ's gotten close to him. But I think Arkansas is in good shape. You're right. He was going to announce. He tweeted out yesterday he was going to announce on Friday. Then later in the afternoon, he announced that he would announce in December. So obviously, he probably would like to hear his decision earlier, but. Who knows? Maybe he might change it and go ahead and announce on Friday. But most likely it looks like a December now.
Now, we've talked about assistant coaches on this staff, and you bring up Sam Carter, defensive back coach for the University of Arkansas. What's interesting about Sam is I remembered him, actually, Richard, watching TCU back in the day. This guy was a stud. I mean, Jim Thorpe, semifinalist, an All-American. I remember watching some of those TCU, and I was like, oh, that's who that guy is. I feel like this is a guy that's kind of gone under the radar. You mentioned just kind of his age and stuff. How important is he going to be for the Arkansas defense and just the background he brings to the defensive backs in the secondary?
Well, I think it's huge because you know, like you said, you talked about his playing days, and that gives you credibility right off the bat with DBs that you're recruiting, and you're not too far removed from the game. Again, like I said, he relates well with the kids, and he's just an extremely hardworking recruiter who just has a way of connecting with the kids, and they have just a trust with him. I think that's the number one thing, because he talks about mostly non-football stuff, and I think a lot of times, a lot of these coaches, they get on the phone, and a lot of times they're talking to 4 or 5 guys in an evening, and a lot of times they just focus on football instead of, you know, outside of football and getting to know the kid. I think Sam does a really good job of getting to know the kids and really gaining their trust by, you know, probably giving them life lessons and you know, just advice how to deal with things that normal kids run up against. And obviously, I think he's done well so far as far as recruiting this year. He's already landed some DBs, and I think they're in good shape with MJ.
All right, so you were with us last Thursday, and I think it was Friday, that wide receiver Keytron Jackson, 4-star wideout, announced he was going to be a Razorback, and that's his verbal commitment. Just want to get your take on this. I know it's nearly a week old, but we hadn't had you back on the program since then. Biggest recruit in the 2021 class, in a great land for Sam and Justin Stepp that we talked about last Thursday, but certainly didn't know that within a few hours later, Richard, he was going to make it official. And you thought it was going to be, Texas was still really strong in there, and he called Arkansas.
Yeah, I back in August, I said I felt pretty comfortable about Arkansas landing him, and then heard a couple of things that made me think that, well, I think maybe Texas might be back in it, but that's just typical of when you're coming down the stretch, and so there's so much talk, behind the scenes about kids, but obviously with him pulling the trigger for Arkansas, that was big. It was kind of expected all along, but at the same time, I always say, until a kid comes out and says something publicly, you just never know. But he told me since March 7th, and he did. He visited Arkansas March 7th, and he said right then Arkansas was at the top of his list. And they pretty much stayed there all along and talking to him. He just felt like that he wanted to take his time and make sure he's making the right decision. Obviously, he visited Texas, wasn't able to, visit with the coaches and all that, but he visited the campus and just looked around Austin. And, word was then that he was maybe leaning towards Texas. A lot of people were saying that. But, again, it goes back to recruiting hard, and Arkansas was on him for the longest. Texas came in late, and Arkansas just was very aggressive in making sure that he knew that he was needed in Fayetteville. And Justin Stepp, he said it. Justin Stepp is just an excellent recruiter, relates well with the kids. And I was talking to Keytron last night about a story that I'll have tomorrow. But he just connects with the kids, mm-hmm. and makes them feel like that they're wanted, and he just has a special way of relating to them.
And Richard, I go back to when he was retained by Sam Pittman. You had Mike Woods, Traylon Burks, Trey Knox, and the other wide receivers drag him into the team showers and just pour water on him and stuff, how excited they were. You can see how much love and passion they have for their coach, their position coach in Stepp. And, he's the best. Based on the guys he keeps bringing in, is it fair to say, and probably can't say he's better than Pittman, but is he the second best recruiter on this staff?
Well, he's definitely got a track record in a short period of time that he's very effective in recruiting. I think some of the other guys that are on staff, we don't know for sure just yet until probably another year or two. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to minimizing what Coach Stepp's done, because what he's done is he's earned the right to be considered one of the best recruiters, I think, in the SEC because of what he's done. Considering the Arkansas's win and loss record. But I really, really like a lot of the guys that are on staff now, and Sam Carter being one of them that we just talked about. But a lot of these guys, I think, do an excellent job of recruiting. It's going to be interesting to see in 2 or 3 years who kind of brings in the biggest guys.
Maybe you can remember. I can't. There was one of the services recognized Stepp as one of the best recruiters in the league. They were ranking that. We talked about it.
It was 24/7. Yeah. Richard, he had him at 14th best in the SEC and like 45th nationally. So I mean, picking up some steam a little bit.
So when you look at it, Richard, right now, I mean, is this staff as a whole kind of leaning on the relationships they built in their previous stops, and that's what's helped build this class? Because really, from the Arkansas perspective, you hadn't had a lot of time to get much traction, particularly with being bound to campus and doing everything virtually. To work those connections from the Arkansas standpoint, seems like a lot of what they're being successful with was probably relationships they cultivated at their previous stop.
I think that's some of it. Keaton Sanders is one, because he was recruited by Coach Pittman and Coach Browse and Coach Fountain when they were at their other places before they got to Arkansas. But for the most part, most of these guys are guys that they've kind of gotten onto since they've been at Arkansas. And obviously with Coach Stepp, he's been recruiting Ketron for quite some time. But the new guys, it's mostly guys that they've jumped on since they've been at Arkansas, because some of the other places where they weren't necessarily recruiting this region. And when I say region, I'm talking Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas.
Yeah. Speaking of Sanders, you brought him up. Trinity Christian's going to be playing coming up at Bryant. Got a few days for that, but that's going to be a great high school football game down in Saline County.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I watched a little bit of Trinity Christian against Lucas Coley's school Friday, and obviously they got great size and all that, but I'll be honest with you, I put my money on Bryant. I really think that they're just an outstanding football team, and being at Bryant's Field, I think gives them a little bit of an advantage. Obviously, the crowd won't be as big, but I just tend to think that they're up to the task, and as good as Trinity Christian is, I'm going to take Bryant.
That's a week from tomorrow, right?
Yeah, not this week, but not Friday, but the following Friday.
Right. Okay.
Richard, we'll close on this point. Tommy brought up something earlier in the week, and he nailed it on the head. For Arkansas football to get back to where the in-state recruiting is at least sufficient enough to compete in the SEC, you got to get more Central Arkansas players, man. We've talked about Daryl Patton at Southwest and Little Rock. We've talked about Buck James there at Bryant, Kevin Kelly at PA. I mean, you've got to have a flurry of who's Parkview? Bolden?
Yeah.
Brad Bolden.
He used to be at North Little Rock, now he's at Parkview.
I mean, you follow this closer than anyone, man. How important is getting Little Rock back to a point of competitive high school football for the integrity of this football program moving forward?
It's going to be huge going forward, and I think the staff and Coach Pittman understand that. And again, we've talked about Little Rock School District investing in their football and athletic programs. John Daniels and Michael Poore have done a great job of that. You're seeing more kids come out. And the more numbers you get, the bigger numbers you get, the more possibilities that you get for prospects. And I think you're going to see that going forward, and you're already seeing that. And I think Little Rock and Central Arkansas has a chance to get back to pretty close to what it was doing in the 70s and 80s. You could count on anywhere from 3 to 5, maybe 6 guys a year, in Central Arkansas. And I think you're going to see that, and you're already seeing that in the 22 class, and I think you're going to see that going forward.
Good stuff from Richard Davenport on a Recruiting Thursday. Richard, enjoy your weekend, man. Watch some football tonight, and then consume some calories over the weekend, like I'm certainly going to.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you. Have a good one.